What do you do when the people who were supposed to protect you choose against you? Not strangers, not enemies. The people who were supposed to be safe. Maybe it was a parent who walked away, a friendship that dissolved without explanation, a community that moved on like you never mattered. Or maybe it was quieter than that, just the slow, suffocating feeling that you are invisible, that no one is coming, that you are on your own. That feeling has a name, and it is one of the heaviest things a human being can carry. Today we're looking at a woman named Hagar. She's not the main character in the story most people tell. She doesn't get the spotlight. She doesn't get the promise. In fact, most of what she gets is pain, used, discarded, and sent into a wilderness with nothing but bread and a skin of water. But here is what makes her story remarkable. In the middle of all of that, the rejection, the exhaustion, the hopelessness, God showed up. Not for the powerful people in her story, for her, the one everyone else forgot. And if you have ever felt forgotten, this story is for you. 1. Used, then discarded. Think about what it feels like to be needed, but never truly loved. To be the person someone turns to when they have a problem, but never the person they think about when everything is fine. You're useful, you're convenient. But the moment the need disappears, so do you. Not with a conversation, not with an explanation. Just quietly, you stop mattering. That was Hagar's entire existence. She didn't choose the life she was born into. She woke up every day as a servant in someone else's house, then invisible in the way that only the powerless truly understand. And then one day, Sarah came to her with an arrangement. Because Sarah couldn't conceive and she needed a solution, she gave Hagar to Abraham as a wife. A wife, but not really. Yes, she was married to Abraham, but this was never a love story. This was a transaction. Hagar didn't walk into that marriage with a choice. She was placed into it because someone else had a problem that needed solving. Her whole role, from the beginning, was to be useful. And for a moment, maybe she thought, maybe this changes things. Maybe now I matter. But when she conceived, the warmth disappeared. The same woman who arranged the marriage now resented her for it. And the resentment didn't stay quiet. It came out in the way Sarah treated her, sharp and relentless, sharp and crushing, until Hagar couldn't take it anymore. So she ran, and the Bible doesn't dramatize it. It just says, Sarai dealt harshly with her, and she fled. Genesis 16:6. Now what's even more heartbreaking is that Hagar didn't walk into that wilderness because she failed anyone. She walked into it because someone failed her. And that difference matters, because abandonment has a way of lying to you. It whispers that you deserved it, that if you had been better, more, different, they would have stayed. But sometimes running away isn't your fault. Some wounds were given to you by people who should have known better and chose not to care. That's where Hagar was, carrying something she never asked for in a place she never chose. And she had no idea that God was already on his way to her. If you liked this video, why make sure to subscribe to our channel Stick with God, where we put perspective on some of the most thoughtful verses from the scripture and holy books. All of this is meant to help you regain strength and faith in the one who sees and hears us. 2. The first time God found her. She didn't go looking for God. God went looking for her. That matters, because when you're in the middle of rejection and pain, you are rarely in a posture of seeking. You are surviving. You are running. You are trying to get as far away from the thing that hurt you as possible. Spiritual seeking is not usually on the agenda, but while she was running, exhausted, alone, and probably terrified, she found water, a spring near the road to Shur. And maybe she sat there for a moment, just breathing, just drinking, and just existing in the small mercy of water when you're thirsty, and the desert is endless. And that's where God met her. The angel of the Lord found her by a spring of water in the wilderness, the spring on the way to Shur. Genesis 16:7. Notice the word, found, not she arrived at the angel. The angel found her. God moved toward a woman who was fleeing, not toward the household she left behind, not toward the prayers of the powerful, but toward one exhausted, hurting woman, sitting alone by a spring in the middle of nowhere. And he didn't open with a sermon. He didn't open with a rebuke. He opened with her name and a question. Hagar, where have you come from and where are you going? He already knew the answer. That wasn't a question asked out of ignorance. That was a question asked to open a door. Lord God was giving her space to be heard, to say out loud what she had been carrying alone. And she answered honestly, no performance, no pretending. I am fleeing from my mistress Sarai. Just the truth, raw and simple, and God received it without judgment. Then he told her something that must have been hard to hear. He asked her to go back, to return to the household, to submit. And if you've ever been hurt by someone, you know how complicated that instruction feels. Going back is not the easy road. It is not the comfortable answer. But God didn't send her back empty. He sent her back with a promise. I will surely multiply your offspring so that they cannot be numbered for multitude. Genesis 16:10. And then he told her she was already carrying a son, and that his name would be Ishmael, which means God hears, because the Lord had heard her affliction. Think about that. God didn't just see her situation from a distance. He heard her affliction. Her specific pain, in her specific moment, had reached heaven. And heaven responded with a name that would remind her, every single day she called her son, that she was not unheard. When was the last time someone asked you where you've come from and where you're going? Not as small talk, not to fill silence, but because they genuinely wanted to know what you've been carrying? That's what God offered her by that spring. Not just water for her body, but the far rarer gift of being truly heard. 3. She named God before God named her, and her response isn't just relief. It isn't just gratitude. She gives God a name. So she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her, "You are a God of seeing." For she said, "Truly here I have seen him who looks after me." Genesis 16:13. El Roi, the God who sees me. An Egyptian servant woman, someone with no social standing, no religious title, no place in the covenant lineage. She is the first person in all of Scripture to give God a personal name from her own experience. Think about what she's really saying. She's not just saying God exists. She's saying, God noticed me. Out of everything happening in the world, out of all the people with more power and more prominence, he looked at me. He saw me specifically. And here's what that encounter does to a person. When you have been treated as invisible, used and then discarded, being seen is not a small thing. It is everything. When it is the thing that restores your sense of worth, the thing that reminds you that you are not a problem to be solved or a tool to be used. You are a person who is known. You are seen. Even when no one around you acts like it, El Roi is still his name. 4. The second abandonment. But fate brought Hagar back to the desert. Yes, she survived the first time. She went back, endured, built something. She had a son. Life continued. And then it happened again. Years later, in Genesis 21, the household dynamic shifts once more. Sarah sees Ishmael and demands he be sent away. And Abraham, the man who fathered her child, wakes up early one morning, hands her bread and a water skin, and sends her into the desert. Again, she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. Genesis 21:14. There is something uniquely devastating about the second abandonment, because the first time, as painful as it was, you could almost believe it was a fluke, a wound you didn't expect. But the second time, after you've already been hurt, after you've already survived, after you've allowed yourself to hope that things were stable, the second time breaks something deeper. It confirms the fear you've been trying not to believe, that this is just what happens to you, that you are the kind of person people leave, that no matter how much you endure, you will eventually be set aside again. That is a lie, but when it's happened twice, it doesn't feel like a lie. It feels like a pattern. Maybe you know what that feels like. A second loss, a second rejection. In the moment the wound from before gets torn open again, wider this time. Hagar didn't choose this, neither did her son, and yet there she was, wandering again, in a wilderness that had no patience for her grief. 5. Under the bush. This is the hardest part of the story. The water runs out. Ishmael is fading. And Hagar does something that no parent ever wants to do. She places her child under a bush, walks away to a distance, and sits down, because she cannot watch him die. Let me not look on the death of the child. And as she sat opposite him, she lifted up her voice and wept. Genesis 21:16. She is not praying here. She is not declaring faith. She is not quoting a promise. She is weeping. She is sitting in the dirt, in the heat, in the silence, and she is weeping because she has nothing left. My dear friend, This gives you a moment to introspect. If you have ever been in a place like that, where your resources ran out, where your strength gave up on you, where your hope ran out, you know that in those moments, nobody wants your theology. You don't need someone to tell you to be stronger. You need someone to show up. Hagar didn't manufacture hope. She didn't talk herself into faith. She just sat down and wept. And that was enough to get heaven's attention. You see, my friend, your exhaustion is not a barrier between you and God. Sometimes it's the very thing that opens the door. 6. God hears, then opens eyes. God didn't wait for Hagar to compose herself. He didn't wait for a formal prayer or a declared confession of faith. He heard a child cry under a bush, and he responded. God heard the voice of the boy, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, "What troubles you, Hagar? Fear not, for God has heard the voice of the boy where he is." Genesis 21:17. He calls her by name. Again, Hagar. Not you there, not the servant woman, her name. And then he says 2 words that cut through everything. Fear not, not, you should have believed more, not, here's what you did wrong. Just, fear not. I hear you, I see you, it's not over. And then God opens her eyes, and she sees a well of water. Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. Genesis 21:19. My dear friend, here's what you need to understand. That well didn't appear in that moment. It was already there. It had been there the whole time she was weeping. The whole time she was sitting in despair, certain that everything was finished. The provision was already present. She just couldn't see it yet. What changes is not the desert. What changes is her perspective. God didn't remove her from the hard place. He opened her eyes inside it. And that is often how he works, not by instantly transporting you out of the pain, but by giving you the ability to see what was already there. A way through, a next step, a well you didn't notice because grief had narrowed your vision. What if God is asking you to let him open your eyes right now? El Roi is still his name. Hagar's story doesn't end in the desert. It ends with a son who grows up strong, with a future, with a nation promised to him. It ends with a mother who survived what should have broken her. It ends with a God who proved, twice, that he does not forget the people that everyone else discards. You may have been used. You may have been discarded. You may have been sent into a wilderness you did not deserve by people who should have known better. You may have sat under a metaphorical bush, certain that it was over, with nothing left to offer and no strength left to believe. But this is what Hagar's story insists. Across thousands of years and into your exact moment right now, the God who followed a runaway servant into a desert, he sees you. The God who heard a child cry under a bush, he hears you. The God who opened a woman's eyes to a well she couldn't see through her tears. He can open yours. His name has not changed. He is still El Roi, the God who sees you, specifically, personally, right now. You are not forgotten. You never were. My dear friend, self-worth is a concept we invented to make sense of a world that treats people differently based on what they have, what they've achieved, and where they come from. But that scale doesn't exist in God's economy. To him, an Egyptian servant running from her mistress carries the same weight as a king sitting on his throne. He doesn't sort by education, status, wealth, or hunger. He hears, he sees, he responds, and he can lift an affliction that no human power, no title, no earthly influence could ever touch. And when God responds to you, when he turns his attention toward your specific pain and says, "I see you," he doesn't just restore you to where you were. He raises you to a place that no person, no approval, no human validation could have ever taken you.